second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is?
Okay, I'm gonna redo that.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is?
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of PvA Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellokline. Cody, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Also joining us today, Super Bowl 53 MVP Larry Hunt.
That is correct, yes.
You did just about as much as anybody else in that game.
Arguably more.
Dude, seriously, Larry came over. We had a couple other friends over last night. Such a boring game. We just sat around and looked at Twitter all day, all night and laughed at people joking on the Super Bowl.
I love the Patriots, and that was the worst game I've ever watched.
It was all defense.
Cody, who'd you watch with?
My housemates were watching it, so I poked in every now and again. I'm not a huge football fan, so Super Bowl isn't much for me. I checked out the halftime show, got immediately disappointed, and then left.
I
Yeah,
was so pumped for Sweet Victory from SpongeBob. And like either do it or don't. Don't like tease it with SpongeBob and then do nothing. I was so mad.
yeah. I think Adam Levine is like kind of a notoriously bad singer live. And a couple years ago, because it used to be you had to do the Super Bowl pre-recorded, and then I think it was the Lady Gaga Super Bowl when she was like, "I will not do the Super Bowl halftime show if it has to be pre-recorded," and now they're letting people do it live, except for Prince. Prince had to call in as a hologram. So
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, once again, the headline of the show was the weakest part of the show because Big Boy was awesome, and then is that Travis Scott? Is that who that is? Yeah, he was pretty dope too. So except they had to bleep out like half of his lines.
Yeah,
Going
that's true.
into it, I just assumed by the name Travis Scott it was a country guy.
Travis Tritt.
Got you.
This is PvA Radio. We get together every week, and each of us brings one of the biggest gaming news stories to the table, and we have an in-depth discussion about it. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article, your CAFA, if you will. Larry, what do we tell people to do with that?
Tattoo it somewhere on your body.
Yes.
The imagination.
You can catch our show live over here every week on twitch.tv/PVA Radio at 9 p.m. We were a little late today, just a couple minutes late, because we were having some Discord issues that are a result of my headset, apparently. I was very excited to use my new wireless headset, and it appears to have just fucked with Discord completely. So, and then if you can't catch us live, you can find us on YouTube. Just search PvA Radio. Also, podcast services everywhere. You can subscribe, leave a review. If you leave a review, we're gonna bring back the Player 3 Podcast Day. Leave a review. Larry will read it in a weird accent. All right, and I've heard all of Larry's accents. None of them are good. All right.
They're all better than Ben doing British accent though.
Have you ever heard Ben's British accent, Cody?
I have not. I haven't been graced with it.
Okay, well, he's like, "Well, I'm a David Tennant."
It sounds like Forrest Gump.
It's terrible. It's so
David
bad.
Tennant is also Scottish.
Yes. This kind of nuance is lost on him. He's like, if it's not America, it's Britain. Everyone else is British.
I mean, every movie I've ever seen where someone from another country is talking, it's a British accent.
That's a really great point that you're making there, Larry. All right, guys, let's jump into it. What have you been playing? Let's start with you, Codsworth, because Larry didn't play anything this week, apparently.
Oops.
Well, he did play a little something, I think.
I did.
It's his topic. But yeah, so I played a little bit of Blackout with my brother over the weekend. We're getting better. We still got to get good, but we're getting better. And then I dove into the Anthem demo for Friday night and then a bunch on Saturday. And I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, mostly just because it's not a great demo. It's weird. You get dropped in at like level 10 and they don't tell you any of the controls. You have to go into like the codex to find the controls. So I was walking around I think it's Fort Tarsus, which is like kind of the story hub, which is fine. It's just first person. You can walk around, talk to people. And then I booted into a mission and I had no idea what I was doing. So I just started pressing buttons. I couldn't figure out how to fly for about a minute. And there's just a lot of things about that game that don't lend itself to a demo where you just get fucking like you're just splat in the middle of this game that's very systemic. Unlike Destiny, where you started at the beginning and kind of worked your way up and got a feel for the power creep and that kind of hook and that loop, I didn't really get it from the demo. And I know they said the kind of the economics and in-game item loop is kind of different for the demo, which is not a great way to show off your game. But I will say, kind of like Spider-Man, moving around in that game is so fun. Like, as soon as I figured out how to fly, it feels so good.
That was one of those mechanics, I think, when everybody saw it, but myself included, like, it's one of those, that is the mechanic that can make or break that game.
Yeah. That's its killer app, essentially. And they clearly put a lot of thought and effort into it because it feels great, it looks great. The animations, especially when you get the other javelins, the other suits are really cool. Like, you start out in the Ranger, which is kind of the jack of all trades javelin suit. And it seemed cool. And then I got the Interceptor and I posted on Twitter of what my Interceptor looks like. The Interceptor is supposed to be super fast and super kind of has stealth capabilities. And I basically decked it out in like 80s neon colors. But it basically controls like a ninja. It has when it jumps, it does kind of a cool flip and then a double jump into its jets. When you jump up and then melee down, it spins in like a pirouette of blades. It's just so cool. And for someone who wasn't crazy about how gunplay felt in Mass Effect, the gunplay is actually pretty satisfying. I only got to toy around with a few guns, but it's good enough. It's not obviously on Destiny levels, but it's more about kind of verticality and where you are in the battlefield, how you move around the battlefield. So I wasn't too jazzed about the demo as a whole, and I think there's still some things like the fact that you can't access the loot you earn during a mission. You have to wait until afterwards to see what it is. You can't apply it in the middle of a mission or swap on the fly like in Destiny, which I guess forces you to kind of choose your equipment and choose your loadout more selectively. I wasn't too crazy about that because I like immediate gratification when it comes to loot. So there's some things that kind of bothered me, but the act of playing the game and flying around was very satisfying.
So with that being said, is there like a mechanic where you have to get out of it? Like, can you lose loot after you've picked it up? Because a lot of times when I see a mechanic where you can't immediately equip it, it's because you can lose it.
No, you can't.
Oh, okay.
You just basically you see it on the battlefield and it's color coded the same way it has been since Diablo, like white, green, blue. And then I didn't see any gold, but I assume there is something above blue, purple, gold, whatever it is. Basically, after a mission, you'll get booted out into a screen where it like shows all the experience you get, and then it shows your loot once you go into the forge, which is where you kind of deck out your javelin however you want. So it's forcing you to go back to the Fort Tarsus area, I guess, to access that stuff. So I'm still unconvinced how that stuff will kind of weave together, because the story stuff I did see was kind of interesting, although it's a lot of jargon and a lot of pronouns, which I guess is kind of par for the course with this kind of sci-fi fantasy stuff. But overall, it was kind of a mixed bag, but it was intriguing enough to make me at least want to play a little more.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's cool. It's always a little hard to like assess how you feel on a demo like that, because it's like, this could be like Destiny 1 where you're like, man, it's only a sliver of what you're going to see. And then you get in the game and it's actually a whole hell of a lot of what you're going to see. So it's always really just difficult to see. And you can't really trust anyone saying like, oh, this is only 5% of the game or whatever that we're getting to see here. So cool. All right, Larry, what have you been playing?
As usual, I played some Overwatch, and this week was a lot better than previous weeks have been. But I also got a chance to jump in and try Apex Legends, and that'll be my topic later, so I don't want to talk too much about it right now, but I had a good time.
All right, fantastic. I played some Overwatch as well, and we actually had a pretty good week. I made it back to Plat. Back in Plat! So that was good. But within that, we also had the single worst game I've ever been a part of.
Oh my gosh.
Right after I got into Plat, we got with these two Plats that were in a duo queue, didn't join team chat, and played both of them played all three roles at some point in the match. And it was a cluster, as they say colloquially.
As they say in the Old West.
Yeah. So, also, all right. So the way I got into Overwatch League, right, was I'm on Twitch one day, and they were replaying they were either replaying or it was live of the like pre-show that they do for the Overwatch League. And me being a traditional sports fan, like saw the production quality of it and just got sucked in immediately, right? Well, it happened again this weekend, boys. With League of Legends.
Oh, no. No.
Dude, first of all, I had an understanding of how big League of Legends was, right? But, like, it was 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and there's 175,000 people watching these regular season matches.
Yeah.
And not just any Sunday afternoon.
Super Bowl Sunday afternoon. I checked the numbers once the Super Bowl started, and they were still pulling 150,000 people. And I mean, I know that it's a global audience, but I mean, and that's just the English stream, right? Yeah. Like, but the production value of that is just light years ahead of where Overwatch League is. And while I don't feel like I'm going to get into League of Legends, number one, I was like, I'm just going to look up some basics on this. Holy shit, there's 120 characters.
Yeah.
And, I watched a little overview video today just to kind of understand basically what was going on in a match without getting into, like, the meta and all that stuff. But what it did do is it got me really excited about, like, where Overwatch League could potentially go as it moves forward and as it grows. Like, I loved the multi-set studio that they had for League of Legends, like in the pre-show. It wasn't like it is during the Overwatch League where it's just like the analyst desk with the Overwatch League stage behind it. There was actually some real, I mean, not that the Overwatch League is anything to sneeze at, but just the production quality was light years ahead. So basically just
time to work it out too.
Basically just going to become a League of Legends nerd, guys. I was going to name a character, but I literally can't remember any of them. And then I have been playing this game called Ding Dong XL. Normally Larry is the one who comes around here with the mobile weirdness. But it's this super simple game they've been pushing like crazy on Kind of Funny. It's not they're not sponsored by them or anything. It's just they're having a lot of fun with it. All it is you hold your phone horizontal, and then there is a ball in the middle of the screen, and every time you tap the ball, it goes from top to bottom, tap it again, bottom to top, while these shapes fly across. And there's different modifiers that come across the screen as well, and it's a high score game, right? And so, and it looks super simple when you first start. It's like, okay, these are moving really slow, and there's not very many of them on the screen, but for some reason I could only get like a 13, 14 streak going. And it was one of those, just anytime I needed to take a little break from work, I'd jump on and do it. And now I have like the 300th high score in the world or something like that at 125. So it's not a good game. It's just a dumb mobile game, but it makes my what have I been playing, because hey, I spent $1 on it and it was totally worth the $1.
Nice.
All right.
Can we quickly talk about how you brought League of Legends and a mobile game to this section?
I don't know who I am anymore. Like, I'm going through, I already had a quarter life crisis. I'm too young for a midlife crisis, unless, oh gosh, I'm not going to make it to 60.
Well, I could have told you that.
So we're just going to move on like this section never happened. Probably just going to cut it out of
Okay.
the recording too.
Cool.
That cool? All right. Fantastic. Let's move on to our topics here. No follow-ups this week. You mean Fallout
That means
didn't?
no Fallout.
You mean Fallout didn't fuck anything up this week?
I mean, they're offering a leather jacket.
Oh, no.
modeled after
Gosh,
Volkswagen.
it's going to be vinyl.
Yeah, so genuine lamb, made with genuine lamb leather or something like that. Sheep leather.
Jam lamb. Lamb jam.
Made with genuine jam lamb.
Lamb? Sheep's. So I'm sure something will come of that.
Turns out it's kangaroo leather.
Oh no.
This is unacceptable.
Kangaroo leather is actually the best leather in the world. My brother had a baseball glove made out of kangaroo leather.
Did it help him jump higher?
Yeah, maybe like a centimeter. Doubling his jump height. All right, guys, it's my topic. Let's talk about Microsoft bringing Xbox Live to a bunch of different platforms and what it doesn't mean, for the most part. All right.
Okay.
So this is actually from The Verge, written by Tom Warren. It says Microsoft is getting ready to release an important software development kit that will allow game developers to integrate Xbox Live into any titles that run across PC, Xbox, iOS, Android, and Nintendo Switch. Spotted by Windows Central, a GDC session reveals that Microsoft will announce its cross-platform push for Xbox Live next month. Some iOS and Android games already have Xbox Live achievements, but they're only enabled in titles from Microsoft Studios, and there's not many of them available right now. Microsoft describes the new push as much bigger. Quote, Xbox Live is expanding from 400 million gaming devices and a reach to over 68 million active players to over 2 billion devices with the release of our new cross-platform XDK, end quote. That's the GDC listing. So he goes on, Xbox Live cross-platform play will allow developers to integrate in friends lists, multiplayer functionality, and achievements into existing mobile games. So I want to start by talking about what this doesn't mean, because I feel like, at least like on Twitter and a little bit on Reddit as well, people like immediately thought that this meant a lot of different things that it clearly doesn't, right? So what this doesn't mean is that Forza Horizon 4 is going to be playable on your Nintendo Switch and your fucking like Samsung device, all right? That's not what this means. It doesn't mean that there's going to be like infinite cross-platform play across everything for all games. Basically, all this is it's a development kit that enables developers to apply Xbox Live tools into their game. So I think the best example is probably Minecraft on the Nintendo Switch. You can sign into your Xbox Live account on that game, and you can unlock Xbox achievements. You can group up with your Xbox friends. It's just going to make that a more universal platform across those areas. And it's not that Nintendo is just going to bake in Xbox Live onto its platform. It's that people who are developing games for the Nintendo Switch are going to be able to utilize those tools the same way Microsoft Studios games utilizes those tools. And so I think that clarifies, right? Like, I think this can be a stepping stone to something bigger, and I think it is an indicator of where Xbox is hoping to go. But from the outset, this doesn't it doesn't totally change the way that Microsoft is approaching their business, I guess is the best way to say it. So, but with the change, there's going to be a bevy of these new features. How do you guys think this impacts the outlook of Xbox's future? How does this play into kind of their overall end game? What are your thoughts?
This is an odd move to me. Like I don't think it's going to hurt Xbox by any means, but I also don't see how it's going to particularly help it. So it'll be cool that this service is going to show up on other platforms, that kind of thing, and it does kind of give them leverage to push a little more hard on the gaming across platforms, which I think is going to open doors to really. I'm trying not to step into the next part of your topic, but
if you do, it's fine.
Okay, the key difference here is going to be that this is going to be a big push against Sony. Like it's just going to be one more thing to stack up against PlayStation. Look, here's another thing where they're not on board.
Yeah, this to me seems like a baby step towards something that they're gradually making their way towards, which is expanding the breadth of their reach across into everything. Again, I think the most notable part of the announcement is the platform that isn't mentioned, which is PlayStation. I mean, looking through the article, I was surprised to see Nintendo Switch, but they kind of do have they've started to reach out to each other a little bit more here and there. So I do think this is leading towards Xbox's future, or their perceived future, of cross-platform play, but also just kind of getting you into their ecosystem however you can get into it. Mm-hmm. They really just want you aligned with the Microsoft brand in some way, and it doesn't seem like they really... I mean, they do care that if you buy an Xbox, but they also care if you're a participator in the Microsoft ecosystem at large. And this is definitely a push towards that. A baby step again, but it's a step nonetheless.
Yeah. I've got mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I think this is a really, really solid move for Microsoft for a few reasons. Number one, I think the marketing power that you're getting from just placing your brand onto other brands' platforms is just incredible. The fact that I'm going to be able to fire up my Nintendo Switch and encounter an Xbox logo fairly frequently, depending on how people leverage these tools, and that Nintendo has invited that onto their system, is insane to me. A little less insane on the mobile side of it, just because that's a little bit more agnostic. But for Nintendo to... Like, Nintendo's thing is exclusivity, and this doesn't touch their side of the exclusivity thing, but it does give Xbox a platform in which to promote their own brand that didn't exist before. And that's kind of wild to me. While I don't know if this necessarily means as much to the cross-platform play idea, I do think with games like Fortnite and Minecraft and that it's just easier integration, and also easier chat integration on the Nintendo Switch for if this brings over like party systems and things like that as well. And it's also just it's a good look for other brands too, other brands too, because like when I'm playing on my PC, I'm signed into Xbox Live, right? And so it's attached to my Xbox Live account, and you can see when I'm playing Overwatch or something like that. So I imagine it's going to work in a similar way where if I'm signed into Xbox Live on my Switch, people will be able to see like, oh, he's playing. It may not be something they can interact with me on, but I'm playing Smash Brothers or something like that. And, so there's a little bit of cross visibility there. But I think what it matters even more for is some cross integration for Xbox services that they're starting to develop. I don't think that Xbox sees Game Pass as something that's going to be exclusively Xbox. I think their future is opening it up to other platforms to access those servers and they've already announced their plans with like the next generation X Cloud for people to be able to play these games on their mobile devices via the power of the cloud, things like that. So doing that on the Switch, I think, would be incredible as well. And then the final thing that I think is a really good thing is people tend to purchase games based on what achievement system they're tied most to, right? Like you have trophy hunters who are like, you have trophy hunters who are like, well, I buy all my stuff on PlayStation because I want to get as many platinums as I can. Or you have people buying their games on Xbox because they want to raise their gamer score. Nintendo doesn't have anything like that. And so if people can start unlocking Xbox achievements on their Nintendo Switch and get attached to that system, when the time comes for them to want to play a game that the Nintendo Switch isn't going to be able to play, they're going to maybe think, oh, well, I'll go buy an Xbox so I can play Anthem or something like that, because they're already attached to that achievement system. So I think it's a smart play in a lot of ways. But I do want to ask you guys, do you see any potential harm for Xbox's value in that they themselves are becoming more agnostic as a platform, it appears?
I think there's definitely a danger in diffusing your platform too much. I guess diffusing is not the right word, but kind of as you said, as it becomes a little bit more agnostic, it becomes obviously less exclusive. And I think up until this point, a lot of Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo have kind of judged their value based on exclusivity. Mm-hmm. And I think they still do to a certain extent. Sony and Nintendo obviously more so than Microsoft. So I think there is a danger of moving into a new vision of what gaming can be before everybody else is even ready to do that. And I think there's definitely a danger of kind of flattening your brand a little bit. If it's everywhere, then it kind of, I guess, the value sinks a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I do also think, like you're right, it's a genius marketing move in that it gets their name and it gets their logo out there. Like you said, the fact that you could potentially see the green on Nintendo Switch is pretty incredible from a branding and a marketing point of view. So while I do think there is a danger of kind of diffusing your brand value, but I also think that's just a new thing that we haven't really seen yet, at least among the three major system holders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with this initial baby step, I'm not real worried about them harming their own brand, but I would actually begin to get worried about it if they did start offering access to Games Pass, because at that point you're getting access to a thing that used to have to buy a console to get access to. I mean, I guess that's true across the board, but I guess access to the games in particular are just a big step in my mind.
But they're already doing that on the PC side. Like you can, the whole Game Pass library isn't available on PC, but you can play quite a number of the games that are in that library on PC.
Yeah, but I think even Microsoft, I think they're flawed in thinking this way, but I think Microsoft just considers PC and Xbox kind of under the same umbrella. And we talked about that a while back. Like, I think that was a harmful step when they started offering so much of what Xbox has on the PC. So I still, that's the only place where I'm concerned about it personally.
I'm sorry, I took a sip of my tea thinking that your point was going to go a little longer. Yeah, I do fear sometimes with Xbox that they are diluting their brand a little too much, but I think right now the momentum is just behind anything that you do. The phase of society we're moving into, like as a culture of people, is this recognition that we don't care what's good for a company. Like, we hold no loyalty to a company in most any area of life. Video games is a little like weird in that regard, but like for the most part, we're going to go to the place that treats us the best, you know? And that hasn't always been the case, right? Like it used to be that if you could get somebody in the door to use your product, they were probably going to use it forever just because people are creatures of habit like that. And I think what we're starting to see on the Sony side of things is like this downfall of like, not downfall because they're still wildly successful, but I do think that they are edging on they are on the teetering edge of like, of arrogance to not realize that that Microsoft has this wave of goodwill behind them with these moves that they're making, that like everything that they're doing is positioning themselves as pro gamer. We put our customer first. It's not about protecting our company brand. When you dig into it, there are benefits, clear benefits to these moves that they're making, but they can position first and foremost like, hey, we're for the gamers, right? Like, and it's a great move now. But I do think that you run the risk of stepping back and thinking like, what is our identity following all of this? Now that, like you said, Cody, now that Xbox is everywhere, what value does our hardware hold? And it's something they've been like dangerously teasing all generation. And I think that we're going to start to see what their first party studios are baking. But even within that, it's like, I know I'm going to be able to play those games on PC as well. And
yeah, I think they are just viewing, I think they're just viewing consoles in a different way than either Nintendo or Sony are. I think they're viewing the future of Xbox as the future of everything. And I think the danger of promoting yourself everywhere is that at a certain point it starts to mean very little or next to nothing. And you see this with brands all the time. So I don't think, again, I do agree with Larry. I don't think that's a danger right now, but I do think if they continue to pursue this path, it could become detrimental to their brand and their I guess maybe their products in the future.
Yeah, it feels to me like if you're not careful, you could wind up going the way of Sega and you're not making consoles anymore. You're just making stuff for other consoles.
Let's move into pachinko.
He said Sega, not Konami.
Yeah, I know. The future of gaming.
And if you're hanging out with us in the chat, feel free to, post any thoughts that you have, any questions that you have on the topic as well. We'll try to get to those. But I guess the last point I want to touch on here, and we've kind of been beating around the bush on it, but let's go right in. Obviously left out in the cold here, Sony, not included, no surprises. But do you think this is reaching a critical mass with the stories? Like, when does this reach a tipping point where they reach across the aisle and say, like, all right, let's play together? Quite literally.
I don't think this alone will move the needle at all. Just if there is one organization that Sony absolutely does not want to reach across the aisle with, it's going to be Xbox. But I think that this can be a small pebble that begins the rock slide. And I know things are already moving that direction, but this opens up even more avenues by which cross-platform play is going to be more easily achieved. And I think that as more games begin to work this in, it may move us toward the tipping point. But I don't think Xbox doing this is going to do very much in that regard for Sony.
Yeah, again, I think this is probably a baby step in this regard as well. This might be segueing a little bit too heavily into Larry's topic, but I am interested to see how cross-platforming works for Apex Legends, because it seems like they're pretty adamant that it will at some point be instituted in the game. That's what they said. And they said Xbox, PS4, PC. But I don't know if that's just a bold claim on their part, or if they do have been in discussions with all those companies. That's not like a needle shifting game, but it's just another point at which Sony can prove or disprove how invested they are in cross-platform play.
But it can be a needle shifting game. Like the wave of reaction for this announcement. Like, I think that there's a potential to grab an audience and a significant audience, but just thinking about the studio behind this, right? And like who leads that studio, Vince Zampella is just like straight shooter, a bit of an asshole, kind of tells it like it is, you know? And I can easily see that being like, hey, we don't have any kind of thing written down, signed by Sony that this is going to be something. We're just going to tell you it's available. And when Sony says they won't do it, we can just toss them under the bus, you know? Like, I could easily see that being the play. And I can see it being an effective play, too, because it's not just Apex Legends. It's not just Respawn. It's EA that's behind it, right? Like, and so Sony has to think not about the relationship with the game or just the studio, but the publisher at large too. And if a decision that they're going to make is going to make that product look bad or harm that product, like, you imagine EA will have something to say about that. So, I don't know where the tipping point is, honestly. I kind of felt like Fortnite felt like a pivotal moment, and it kind of fizzled away, and then they were like, all right, we'll introduce it as a beta. Like, it kind of changed, but at the end of the day, like, I don't think the narrative has changed at all, because you still see stuff like this where it's like, this isn't a massive change. I guess it would be a massive change in Sony's ecosystem, but it's like, if they still aren't willing to at least entertain and play ball with something like this, then we're ages away from seeing any kind of real universal inclusion of cross-platform play. So,
yeah.
All right. Let's move on, guys. Larry,
All right.
we've already kind of moved on to your topic. Let's talk. What do you got for us?
So a little game dropped today. I would not say it was a very anticipated game.
Impossible to anticipate something you don't know is coming.
Right? So like there were rumors swirling that they were going to drop this game quick. I don't remember seeing any particular rumors that they were going to drop it immediately. Were there rumors of that?
There were rumors
Yeah.
it would be today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over the weekend.
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
So I saw those rumors. I was like, okay, we'll see. And frankly, I was really shocked. I dropped the link for the live stream. I was waiting on the live stream to get my stuff in the show notes, and didn't even look at anything else. I had to work today, and when I got home, I went to finally finish up the show notes at like 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight, and I was like, this game is out, and immediately went and downloaded it, jumped in as soon as I could. And I am not the biggest fan of battle royale games, but I am a huge fan of Titanfall. And this game's kind of set in that universe, and coming from Respawn, I was very excited for this. Have both of you played Titanfall? I know Luke has. Okay. So just mechanically, I love it. It's such a smooth game. The way you move through the environment, the gunplay is fantastic. I love Titanfall so much. But first off, this game launch. What a game launch. This is the kind of game launch I want. Don't tell me 5 years from 5 years ago that this game is coming and give me snippets over the course of years. Tell me that we might be talking about a game soon and then hand me the game. I love this. So what did you guys think about this launch?
Let me say something and just let it sink in, all right? In the last 5 years, EA has released 3 games in the Titanfall universe. They have released 2 in the Star Wars universe in that same time frame. No, I am all about this kind of stuff, man. Like, this is... Respawn could not suffer from another botched release, right? Like, Titanfall 1, it was this highly... it was a highly anticipated title. At the 11th hour, EA backs up a truckload of money to the studio, says, hey, Microsoft backs up a truckload of money to EA and says, we want to have this exclusive on the Xbox One at a time where the install base on Xbox One was just microscopic relative to the PS4. And so I don't want to say it was DOA, but it didn't have legs because of the player base. And then Titanfall 2 was just released in the middle of literally everything. Like, in the middle of a new Call of Duty, in the middle of a new Battlefield, in the middle of another game made by EA. Like, And I would say Titanfall 2 was DOA. It really didn't have much of a player base at any point. So this was the right call. If they were going to do something else, correct me if I'm wrong. This game is canonically in the Titanfall universe, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I was seeing some stuff that was like, well, we don't know. I wanted to make sure.
It is.
No,
Even
they
the
said.
title gives it away.
Yeah. So, anyway, they couldn't afford to botch something else with this franchise, with this IP. And it's the perfect time of year to do something like this. Free to play. Turning heads. Titanfall is a game that gunplay wise can compete with some of the best first person shooters that are out there. This was a really smart move all the way down the line. Respawn, EA.
Yeah, I think it's especially the quotes coming from whoever. What was his name? Whoever the studio head is, or the head of this team. The quotes coming from him were arrogant and also spot on. He's like, people are going to be skeptical of this. It's a free to play battle royale game that's set in a universe that people just want a third entry of. They're going to be skeptical of it already. So let's just release the fucking thing and let them play it. And that's exactly what they did. And it seems to be that there does seem to be a lot of positive buzz around it. And I think we can probably talk about the reason why it's free to play and the reason why this game exists in the first place. But it seems like it will actually pay off in a way that the other two Titanfall games unfortunately weren't able to execute on.
Yeah. So I'm going to change the order of this because we're already hitting all over the ending questions of my topic here. And I just by the way you guys have talked already, I assume you agree here. Titanfall, great game, and I think that it deserved far more success than it enjoyed. Do you guys agree with that, or do you think that even if it had been released in better ways, that it would have probably not performed quite so great?
I agree that there was a window in which it could have had its audience. I still think that the style of game probably came a little too late in the game. Regardless of how it was released, I think it could have fared better than it did, and I think it was a better game than what it received as far as commercial success. But I do think that just as a baseline formula, like Titanfall always had an uphill battle to climb. Like the Titans were a really cool wrinkle in the first person shooter, like objective based game. But at the end of the day, it was just like that market is so saturated and the players are already so well defined that I'm not sure how much better it would have fared, but it was just never given the opportunity to prove it could fare any better.
Yeah. I just talking about my relationship with it, I played the hell out of the first Titanfall. And I do think it was, at least at the time for me, I understand it came at the tail end of kind of the Call of Duty craze, that style of shooter. But I think it was in a lot of ways infinitely more satisfying than Call of Duty was, at least for me, in a lot of ways. Pulling off great plays in that game felt better than almost any game at the time and any game since. And I think the Titans were more than a unique wrinkle in that formula. I think it was a very integral and unique mechanic, one that was pulled from other games, obviously, but that was integrated in a unique way. And I think Titanfall 2 has become somewhat of a cult classic since it released. I think if you talk to any games media or games critic, you're going to hear that they love Titanfall 2, either for the unique story that it told or for the killer multiplayer. Unfortunately, it was cannibalized by its own company and then other games around. But I think Titanfall 2 did have a shot at becoming something. Unfortunately, yeah, everything else conspired against it, namely EA.
Yeah, the first game was sacrificed, basically sacrificed so EA could have money, and also sacrificed to saved the Xbox. I would argue, there was no reason to buy an Xbox prior to that game.
Rise, Dead Rising 3.
Right.
Need I say more?
But and I'm glad that it did on the one hand, but I'm really like sad that it cost the game itself such an audience. If that game had been available on PlayStation, I think it would have been up there, man. It would have been a big contender, I believe. And then Titanfall 2, I almost felt like it was sacrificed to deliberately saturate the market to like take sales away from other games, but I don't know. Like,
That was exactly
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, that was exactly the play. It was like
Official land.
it was like, hey, we can release Battlefield here, and it's going to attract one kind of first-person shooter audience that Call of Duty has. We're going to release Titanfall. It's going to attract the other kind of audience that Call of Duty, and it just didn't work. Call of Duty was still the best-selling game of that year. So, but another thing. I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you?
You did, but keep rolling. I know who I am.
I feel bad. But I think another thing that got in the way of Titanfall is like I think it had balancing issues all around that it never quite figured out. As far as like matches were either like you won overwhelmingly or you lost overwhelmingly just due to the way that like you got your Titans and they were just. From my experience playing, the balancing never felt quite right.
There is an inherent power imbalance in the concept of the game. And they mentioned this. I think the lead designer of this game mentioned it in an interview with Eurogamer. He's like, the reason we didn't include Titans in this Battle Royale mode is that the concept of a Titan is that it's 4 aces in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
You are supposed to overpower every single other human player that you come across, and that presents obvious balancing issues.
See, I think that was really true with the first game, but I really do feel like they fixed it a lot with the second game. And in many ways, it was disappointing to me how easily you could take a Titan down in Titanfall 2, but I do think that it did a lot for the balance of the game.
But the other way that they attempted to balance it within the game was it took you longer to get your Titan at launch. Yeah. And they had to fix that. And so, again, it was just like you said, Cody, it's an inherently imbalanced concept to begin with. But it's the reason that, like, Halo 4 struggled so bad coming out of the gate because the way that they decided to do their multiplayer was just so fucked. Like, hey, you're going to have these loadouts, but we're also going to have weapons on the map that you're going to be able to fight over. And it was the same way. You either got rolled or you rolled, and it's not a fun environment to play in. And I think that really impacted Titanfall's reception as well out of the gate for both games.
Yeah,
I love that this just turned into a topic about Titanfall.
As it should.
We haven't even started talking about Apex Legends.
Well, I mean, this is important for setting the stage for that. It really is. But the unique thing with Titanfall for me was even when you got rolled, like I had fun. It's the only game I play where win or lose, I have fun playing it. Like I could lose every game in a night and still have fun playing Titanfall, and that may not be everyone's experience, but it is mine. And even when you lose the final run to try and make it on board the ship, I love that.
Genius idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it has such a variety of game modes as well, and in a lot of those game modes, the balance issue isn't an issue.
Yeah.
But I understand that not everyone's going to be drawn to Pilot Hunter or...
Pilot Hunter is the best Call of Duty released in the last decade.
But one last point I want to make on Titanfall and whether it deserves more success or not is I think that it sent ripples out through the first-person shooter genre. But so few people engaged it that they maybe don't realize that. Like the faster paced gameplay we have in first person shooters, like I credit Titanfall for a lot of that.
You can see it in Call of Duty specifically.
Yeah.
Which essentially became Titanfall.
Yeah. Their futuristic game was a straight up Titanfall. Like it was Titanfall minus Titans. So yeah, well we've beat that horse into the ground. It's a great game, deserves more success. We may not agree on how much more, but definitely more. And it was sacrificed for various reasons. But that leads us to where we are now with Apex Legends. Did you guys get a chance to watch any of the gameplay? I know you haven't played it yet.
Not yet.
Oh, hold on, my friend. I took notes.
Oh shit!
I came home and I watched the deep feature breakdown, and then I watched I think Polygon did 12 minutes of gameplay,
Yeah.
and so I just took a handful of notes here that I'm gonna start trying to do this for all of the topics so that I can be a little more prepared. But I knew I wasn't gonna have a chance to play, and I think this is a game that you're gonna have to get your hands on to really get a clear sense of it, was Titanfall in a nutshell, like. Well, probably video games in a nutshell, but Titanfall especially. So anyway, yes, I have consumed content.
I didn't have time. I'm sorry.
I did the training, and that was like Titanfall always has a really good solid training that doesn't feel like it's a huge waste of time. And then I dropped into my first match, and I heard my 4-year-old say to my 2-year-old, "Ezra, where did you get chocolate?" Oh, gross. That's not chocolate.
Oh no.
It was mole sauce.
Sorry, teammates. I have to go take care of a poop mess. But then I dropped into another match.
Sorry, teammates. I have to take care of a poop mess and whatever my child did.
There it is.
So anyway, what were your first impressions of this, Luke?
All right. Well, where do you want to start? Like, as far as the game goes, is there a certain aspect? Because I've got notes about a ton of stuff.
Well, let's start mechanically. Like, it feels like Titanfall in a lot of ways. So for me, the gunplay is still great. It has everything good as far as that goes. I was a little disappointed how long it took to kill people at places, but I also understand that this is a battle royale game and it can be frustrating to die immediately. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is a thing.
Well, and it's probably a lot like a lot of battle royale games where just like out of the gate, the armor system is just fucked. Like that was blackout out of the gate, kind of blackout now still.
Yeah.
And a lot of battle royales suffer from that.
Yeah. My one disappointment mechanically is the thing that made Titanfall was being the pilot who could traverse the environment with the free running, and that component has been removed from this. You can't wall, like, you can run up a wall to get to a ledge, but you can't like zip across the walls. Like your movement's a lot more limited, and I understand why they did that. You know, you got to have the big map that you can't traverse super quickly, but it does take a little bit of the uniqueness out of what the game is. So that's my only complaint mechanically.
So is there a limit to how high you can climb?
I think there is, but I never attempted it in a situation where I failed. So
it's like a significant amount you can climb. Because one of the things I love about Titanfall, I like the wall running and I like the frenetic mechanics, but I love how the mechanics inform the level design. And one of the things that I think is missing in a lot of battle royale games is outside of like Fortnite, but Fortnite just doesn't speak to me mechanically in a lot of ways. And that's verticality, and useful verticality. Like PUBG has a lot of big buildings and stuff, but it just takes you 14 years to walk up all the steps to get to the top. And so, just first impressions seeing the map, and first of all, the diversity of the map reminding me a lot of like how Blackout is. It's even more diverse than the Blackout map, but the verticality was another big thing. And so a little disappointing in the wall running stuff as well, but it like you said, it makes total sense. Like you can't, if you had something where you could kill people quickly and you move so fast that you killed people quickly without ever being seen, like it's just a frustrating experience for the people that are getting killed, and that's not what you want. So, but yeah, mechanically it's something that's a little harder for me to speak to because I haven't played it yet.
Okay. I do want to talk about a few key ways that it differs from other battle royale games. I mean, it is a battle royale game. You're dropping out of a drop ship onto the ground. Obviously, where else would you drop? That was stupid. And slowly the circle is shrinking at random, like at timed intervals, but to random areas. And if you get caught outside of the circle, you're going to start dying. Like all that's the same. But there are a few key differences that I really appreciate. One is how you drop. So you have a jump master, and the jump master decides where you drop, and you can like opt out of that and do your own thing. But in general, you just let the drop master control it, and they take you straight to where you're going to go. And they don't even do a parachute thing. Like you just sort of thrust backwards and land on the ground. And you're good to go. And it speeds up the getting to the ground. And I'm not sure yet if I like it more or like it less, but it's different. And it takes away one of the things that is really tedious in battle royale games, which is long parachute rides.
Yeah. No, I had that down as a point that I wanted to bring up too. I like the jump master idea. I like that it seems far more team oriented than just like, hey, we're greater in numbers, which is kind of the way that most battle royales approach teamwork, is just 4 sets of eyes are better than one. This one, there seems to be a real emphasis on synergies and character designs, because the legends in in Apex Legends, I'm going to call it Titanfall Legends, so just buckle in for that. What Legends is referring to are the multiple classes of characters that you can play, and much like like in Overwatch, those characters have different abilities that they can use, and from what it looked like, some really cool and diverse abilities as well. It wasn't just like, hey, this guy has a shield, Yeah. So I really like that idea. It seems really focused on squad-based things, and the more that I'm getting into like esports and Overwatch, those sorts of things, and really interested in metas and how characters work together, that's going to be something fun to get in and play around with on this game.
Yeah. And that's probably the biggest difference. Is there a battle royale? Like, I don't think Call of Duty works that way, where like different characters do different things. This is a new thing to this genre, right?
Yeah, Call of Duty's multiplayer tries to work like that, but Blackout does not.
Yeah, and so it gets away from the battle royale experience of you drop in with literally nothing you can do, and it's all by chance and what you can find. But I think it's good. It's refreshing, and it does open it up to being able to do some unique things. I was using the character that can like warp by cutting through alternate dimensions, and the abilities on a cooldown. What?
So can you guys clarify what some of these abilities are? Because that sounds incredible.
So that's phase shift, I think is what it's called. It's been in Titanfall since the first one, but in the second one it played a huge role. Did you ever play Titanfall 2's campaign?
A little bit, yeah.
So did you get to the level where you had to keep going between timelines?
Yes, yeah.
It's basically that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But instead of going to an alternate time, you're cutting through an alternate dimension, and the world that you're in looks kind of fuzzy, and you can come out in a different place. You can't see where people are when you're in that dimension, but when you come back out, you can be in a totally different place. But the ultimate for that character is they rip a hole in one point, and then you run, and you can rip a hole in another point, and for 60 seconds, you've got a teleporter that can go back and forth between two areas. And that just so like you could have like the second floor of a building with a window, you've got a teleporter, and then another building across the street, and you can be hitting them from alternating sides back and forth for 60 seconds or whatever. You can get your whole team somewhere safe, all kinds of that kind of stuff.
So SBilly21 says, I'll say this. Never played Titanfall or Titanfall 2. Kind of regretted that. Looked fun and people raved about it. But I'm tired of the Battle Royale saturation and would have preferred an attempt at something not Battle Royale. I tend to disagree there. Like, sure, there's a lot of Battle Royales, but like, okay, there's also a lot of multiplayer first-person shooters. Like, what matters to me what matters to me more than saturation is, are you doing something different? And I think all these things that we're laying out here are like, this makes it different. And and the synergies, the abilities, the fact that you don't feel powerless immediately upon hitting the ground until you can find your first weapon, I think is a big difference maker. Another mechanic that's really cool is the resurrection mechanic, where when a teammate dies, they drop like a card. And if you go and get that card within a certain amount of time, you can then deliver that card to a station that will resurrect your teammate. They don't have anything, and so you're going to have to give them weapons so that they can survive. They'll have their abilities still. But so when you're dead, you're not completely out of it. I think that the battle royale genre is one of those, like, there's a ton of shit in it, but it just isn't super explored. Like, it's all pretty derivative. And I'm not saying Titanfall, Apex Legends isn't derivative. I don't have enough experience with it to know that for sure. But these sorts of changes like this are welcome, in my opinion.
By the way, shout out to S-Billy. That's a pal of mine from the other Discord.
Oh, nice.
The only thing I would add, because I can't speak to Apex Legends, but I would say that I think understanding battle royale as a genre and not is key. Mm-hmm. Just like MOBAs or first-person shooters, you're either gonna, like, there are so many MOBAs and there are so many first-person shooters. So if you just don't click with it, that's fine. But battle royale is a genre that I think is here to stay for a good amount of time. Mm-hmm. And I think just like if finding the differences between Battlefield and Call of Duty is key to your enjoyment of those games, like you said, finding the differences in these battle royale games it'll either click with you or it won't. That's the reason I'm kind of tired of battle royale games as well, but I like Blackout just because of the speed and fluidity of it, which is much different than PUBG and much different than Fortnite, which are the other big players, I guess.
Yeah. So it does build on the genre for sure. I think it's not just another. Everyone else is doing a battle royale, so let's do a battle royale.
They did sort of do that. That's
but they didn't just drop the same game.
No. I'm just saying, like, the reason I think everybody should read the Eurogamer interview with the guys who made this game, because they're like, we were thinking of how to make another Titanfall, and then we saw PUBG, and we're like, this is really cool. It's definitely more than just a game mode; it's a genre. So let's try to do something within this universe in there. So the nugget of it was there, which is, it's cool that they kind of thought about it that way.
And in a lot of ways, like, I sort of agree with S-Billy. Like, I would rather have another Titanfall game personally, but that franchise has just been crapped on as we established, and they had to do something besides that.
Yeah, this could be super impactful for the brand too in the future.
Which is what makes it, and I don't know who was going to bring this up because we talked about it pre-show, but which makes the name Apex Legends kind of dumb.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
I mean, Apex Legends is a dumb name to begin with, like, outside of any kind of branding idea. But if the goal of this is to, like, posture this franchise in such a way that you can kind of get back to what you were originally trying to do with it, then it needs to say Titanfall somewhere. And the fact that, like, there was no lead up, there was no pre-announcement, they just, like, announced it and it dropped, means that there was no runway for people to make the jokes about Titanfall's demise the last two times. And so they could have gotten away with using that brand name again, called it Titanfall Legends, or, Titanfall somewhere in the name.
Legends : Titanfall.
Titanfall 2.5.
Yeah, there you go. Do it with Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, but I also think it would have suffered from, I bought this Titanfall game and there are no Titans in it,
That's a good point. Which is also another thing I appreciate about this is, like, and the reason that I struggle to agree with S-Billy's opinion about it is because, like, if this was just, hey, the market is saturated, strike while the iron's hot, like, if it was just that, they would have tried to shoehorn their entire premise into that genre and, like, not really thought about it in a real, because this seems to be really thinking about their universe, thinking about the battle royale, and thinking about ways that they can meld the two together in a really good marriage. Whereas, like, strike while the iron's hot would be like Fortnite's, oh shit, we have this game where you have guns in building, let's put them together and make a battle royale game. And the fact this game doesn't have Titans, to me, is the proof, is, like, that's the evidence to me that it wasn't just trying to shoehorn itself into a genre.
Yeah. And when this game was rumored, I was actually worried about the Titans. As much as I love the Titan gameplay, I was like, how do you do that in a battle royale? And it would be awful.
I wouldn't be surprised if they end up creating a variant or a game mode that does involve a Titan, a single Titan in the future.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it implemented kind of like the Infinity Gauntlet was in Fortnite, where
Yeah,
your
that's what
team
I'm thinking
has to like find the pieces to it in order to assemble it. Like, I think that would be a really cool approach to it.
Yeah. So I want to kind of get back to some of the differences, and I was getting too in the weeds, so I'll just cap off the abilities thing with, you've got like a medic, you've got people that can call in various types of airstrikes, you've got a really unique character who can drop like poisonous gas that does various things to people. A guy who lays traps, that kind of thing. So like this vast array of abilities, and I like that they're on cooldown. Like, you don't have to find ammo, you don't have to find some power up thing to keep it going. And I'm not sure yet. I haven't paid enough attention with your like ultimate ability. I don't know if that's what it's called. That's what I've been referring to it as. I'm not sure if like getting kills or laying damage makes that speed up, but it's a percentage thing that builds up, and then you can use it.
I would imagine it probably does.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see why you wouldn't have it be that way.
Yeah. And although there's not free running, there are a lot of zip lines through the environment, so there are some fast ways to move about. But the zip lines, the trade-off is they do leave you wide open. Hey, look, there's some people flying through the air unprotected. The ability to respawn a character, like when I first heard that, I was like, that kind of defeats the purpose of the genre, but it actually makes it kind of refreshing, because there's nothing more frustrating than dying in the first 5 seconds and watching your team make it to the final 2.
How does that work?
You drop a card, and you have to retrieve a teammate has to retrieve that card within, I think, 60 seconds, and then you deliver it to this machine that you put it in, and it revives them.
So you have to really work for it.
Yeah,
it's no easy task.
Yeah, which I like a lot better than, because Blackout has introduced a mode where they tried to where they introduced a respawn mechanic where if one of your teammates makes it to the next circle, you'll drop back in with just a pistol, I think. Yeah. And I don't like that as much, because it doesn't it's just like, hey, run to the circle and go hide in the bush. It doesn't reward aggression or anything like that. And I like the action in battle royale games. I don't like, hey, let's run around gathering ammo for 5 minutes and not see a single soul.
Yeah. And the unfortunate thing for me in my limited experience so far is that the team I played with, all they wanted to do was hide in bushes, and I'm the kind of guy who, I want to go kill somebody. Yeah. And that's how I wound up dying. I was like, well, this gets to another unique thing as well. Your right bumper is like a context-sensitive team call-out thing.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you don't have mics, you've got a lot of communicating you can do.
Nice.
But even if you do have mics, it's particularly helpful because it highlights things on the map. So you can call out, there's this particular ammo here, like any kind of item. You right bumper it, and it highlights it for your teammates, and your character yells, such and such right here. You can highlight where an enemy is. And if you hold it down, you get like a wheel of options. So you can even mark, I think someone's been here. I think there's an enemy over here. Let's move to this location. Like, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with it, just with the click of a button. And it can totally replace communication when communication is not possible, but it also amplifies communication when you are on mic. And I think that is a really great addition to this game type.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I think I'm excited about that, playing as a party even, like, because communication in battle royale games is always a little wonky when you're using your compass directions, because people don't understand that, like, if I'm standing here and the enemy is in between me and you, the number on the compass isn't going to be the same. And so I think that's cool. You can also, like, another big thing that we do in battle royales is like, hey, I need 556. Does anybody see 556? Yeah. You can call that out on that wheel and say, hey, I'm looking for this kind of extended mag, an extended mag for an SMG, and it'll like put it up. It'll like give an icon for you that's what you need, so that your teammates are aware, and if they see it, they can tell you. So yeah, I had the call out system written down. I think that is like. That's kind of a game changer for me in this mode too.
Yeah, I expect other battle royales to actually start implementing that, just because it's so helpful.
So,
And-
hey, real quick, for the tagging enemies, did they have to be in your crosshairs, or was it like a scan?
They have to be in your crosshairs.
Okay, all right, that's good.
But you can also, on the wheel option, if you're pretty sure there's somebody, you can flag an area as having an enemy, whether anyone's in your crosshairs or not. But you might be wrong. But if you right bumper while you're actually on an enemy, it will highlight them for you. And it's not super strict. There's a little give on it, but it's also not the kind of thing where you could just be spamming through the bushes and luck upon an enemy.
I imagine I think it would be nice to have something like that on a cooldown too.
Oh, gotcha. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's just the tagging enemies thing, like just in case there is a way that you can figure out how to spam it. But another cool thing you can do with the right bumper is you can mark an area with just your reticle, rather than having to open the map and say, let's go here to this building. Yeah. You can look at somewhere and say, hey, we should move over here and search these buildings. And just it makes communication so much easier, it looks like.
Yeah.
Gosh, I want to go download this and play it right now.
I do too.
I thought you were saying scanning for enemies should be on cooldown. That's what I was like. Actually, there's a character that does that. There's a track character, and like he can notice footprints, that kind of thing. Like that's a really cool ability set. He'll probably be my second most played one.
I just don't want to tank. There seems to be tanks. I don't want to play tank. All right, I play tank and everything else.
I'm sure you'll be good.
I was going to bring up one last thing. I think I've lost it. Any other differences you want to highlight with this game?
So another thing that they do with the drop down is they highlight hot zones for loot. So rather than just like knowing that, like, oh man, Pachinki's got a lot of really great loot, let's drop Pachinki. Each map, like I'm sure that there are areas that are just denser by their very nature, but there's also places like, hey, if you drop here, there's really a chance. And then they have these like mobile shipping carriers as well that move around the map, and if you can successfully get on them, there's like tons of legendary loot on those as well.
Yeah, so you can drop onto those, but also they like fly around the map and put down zip lines from time to time, and you can zip line up to them. And if they happen to be in the circle, they actually give you a really great place to hole up.
I was also trying to understand, I like a lot of the customization stuff, like obviously weapon skins and character skins, and each class and character has their own like diverse items, which is really cool. But the banner thing, do those show up when you get kills in areas? Like, how does that work? Because I was seeing them pop up in the gameplay, and it looked really awesome.
So there are these big banners hanging in certain places on the map, and the team that is on that banner is the that's leading in kills.
Oh, that's cool.
So if you've killed the most people, then boom, there you are.
All right, well, that sucks. That sucks that I will never see myself on a banner.
I remember the last thing I was going to bring up, and this is probably true of Blackout as well. I haven't played Blackout, but the Titanfall just has such a great variety of weapons, and so they bring that to the genre, which is something that, like, I know Fortnite has a variety of weapons, but it's basically different levels of the same weapon functionally. And PUBG is more or less the same way, but Titanfall actually has a lot of different weapons that function in pretty different ways. And
like
I
what?
appreciate that. Sorry, what?
Like what?
So, shotgun wise, you've got, this isn't different from PUBG. That's a bad example. But so let's go to machine guns. Like there's a lot more variety in speed versus damage done, rather than just it shoots fast and does more damage the more rare it is. So you can kind of select it based on your own personal preference, and range is a factor with some of those weapons as well.
Does it have the auto pistol?
Weapons?
I haven't come across that yet, and I hope not.
Who are you answering?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was answering Luke. Are you talking about the one that no way?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a smart pistol.
That's what I'm thinking. I couldn't remember what it was called. That's
would
it.
be OP.
Yeah.
Well, it was in multiplayer in at least the first Titanfall.
Yeah. In the second one, it was like a reward you could get if you got a kill streak. So maybe it shows up in that capacity. You can find one on the map with one clip. Not even like Gosh,
One
that
bullet.
would destroy. Yeah, there you go. What did you ask, Cody? I couldn't hear you.
I was asking if there are any laser weapons.
There are energy-based weapons,
Okay,
but it's not like a Spartan laser type thing.
cool.
It's more of a. It still looks like it's shooting bullets.
Wait, you mean my railgun anti-Titan weapon isn't in this game?
I haven't seen it yet. It might be.
Gosh, I love that gun.
Yeah, that's so cool.
All right.
So we've talked about this plenty. Just Titanfall didn't have as much success as it thought. Do you think this change of formula is going to result in this faring better than the Titanfall games have, or do you think it's going to fizzle out again?
It's free. It's February, and it dropped immediately.
And
Yes.
it's a battle royale game.
Fair enough.
But I mean, it's worth noting that it's a free battle royale game that controls and plays like Titanfall,
Yeah.
which is absolutely nuts.
It is a free to play AAA battle royale game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I really think that it could wind up being the best battle royale option we have out there. Just gunplay wise, Fortnite it does not have good gunplay. Sorry. PUBG is still a freaking mess. I don't know how they're still charging people for it and considering themselves a full release. And Blackout I think is good. Just I think that this is going to wind up being a little bit better.
All right. Awesome. Cody, your topic. This is a hella long episode. I love it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we don't have to do mine. Mine's pretty minor.
Well, no, I don't think it'll take long either. So let's do it.
All right. So my story, not a huge news story from the week, but I thought it was interesting enough to spark a little discussion. Bringing real sports into this video game podcast. The new Manchester United manager, and I'm gonna butcher his name. It is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's Norwegian. He's the new manager for Manchester United, and he's been in and around soccer for a long time in some way or another, but he's mostly known for successfully managing teams in Norway. And the reason this is a video game related story is that he apparently grew up and still plays to a certain extent soccer managing simulators. He's super big into them, and the reason I bring this up is that obviously his career path has dovetailed with the fact that he has played these games. And while I don't think it's a one-to-one, I do think that simulators and other games have the potential to teach, if not help us develop skills that are applicable outside of games. That's not a bold statement. That's pretty cliche at this point. But I quickly just wanted to get into it. Have you guys ever been into a simulator? And if not, why do you think people are into simulators?
Go ahead.
The only one I've ever been into is Sims.
Fair enough.
So I got into that one at a pretty young age, and me and my friend Cameron, we were always like, why is this so addicting? Like, you're just living a regular, boring life. But it was so much fun. So yeah, that as far as simulators go, that's the only one that I've ever gotten into.
Yeah, I can kind of I jive with this story quite a bit. I've never played Football Simulator, and I've never played any of I think there's several different sports simulator games, but so and I don't know a ton about soccer, but I do know that the finances and the player movement stuff, in the scouting in soccer, is just fucking ridiculous. There's certain transfer windows. There's times you can and can't loan players. And so where I jive with this is I am a sim sports game player. And so a lot of people the card-based modes or whatever when they're playing Madden or NBA 2K, or they like to play real arcadey. When I play those games, I am playing 12-minute quarters, most realistic sliders I can, all of the salary cap and trade restrictions and rules. And the NBA has actually got super convoluted rules, right? As far as the salary cap goes. And outside of video games, I play in a real salary cap fantasy basketball league. And so the way that it works is we have 10 to 12 roster slots, and we build our rosters based off of the actual salary cap and the real player salaries. And I wrote our rule book that outlines how you trade stuff. So it's got things like trade exceptions and mid-level exceptions and injury exceptions and how trades have to match up and caps have to work. And so I jive with this story because my brother and I grew up like nerding out on this stuff, playing Madden. And I think I've told the story on the podcast back in the day when we would fire up Triple Play Baseball 2000 and we would like get all the rosters right on the N64, make all the trades, create all the players that were in the league at the time, and then play 2 days on a season and decide to start all over again because somebody else got traded and we wanted to reflect it. So like but at the end of the day, that's like the closest thing to a simulator that I've ever been into. My dad liked to do flight simulators, and he didn't have like the crazy rigs or anything like that. But, you know, he had a joystick and liked to play, and I would hop on and fly. And those games are fun, but they're hella hard and hella frustrating.
Yeah.
And then Sim City. That's not really a sim, though, I don't guess. I played a shitload of Sim City.
It's an urban development sim, pretty much.
So, with alien attacks.
Yeah, that's true.
I did play a ton of that.
Yeah.
S Billy 21 has played Computer Builder Simulator.
There you go. Probably he has built his own computers as well.
Yo, did any of you guys play Sim City, like Sim City 2000, anything like that?
I did. We played it in school, actually.
Did you ever play
computers.
Did you ever play the Streets of Sim City?
No.
Have you ever heard of this?
I have. Yeah.
So this was awesome. You can make your city in Sim City 2000 and then upload it into the Streets of Sim City, and you could drive your car around the city that you've built. Gosh, it was so awesome.
Yeah, I think that for me, in terms of like simulators, I think it's the most immersive that a game can become, where it's just pure immersion. Like definitely, like flight simulators are immersive to the point where, like airlines use them and the army uses it to prep their pilots. Like that's how you train. You train on that before you go out in the field. And while I don't think I've ever really been super into a simulator, I think there are games that have taken aspects of simulators, and those are I really dig it when there's that melding of like AAA game design with simulators. Like I think Red Dead is the most recent example of that. I actually dig the simulation elements of that and the survival elements. That makes me feel more immersed. By the way, I do want to mention that this is based off a Kotaku article by Luke Plunkett. It's also based off technically the interview with the guys from 2013, but it is resurfaced because was recently made the manager of Manchester United, and people are suddenly realizing how kind of badass it is that he kind of cut his teeth on simulators. So I do want to kind of, I guess we've already sort of talked about this, but zooming it out a little bit, is there ever a case in your life where you've learned or kind of developed a skill through a simulator or not even a simulator, but maybe a video game in general? Luke, you've already kind of alluded to this, but I'm curious about you, Larry.
Hey, real quick, before you answer that, I do want to mention S. Billy said that he never actually played Computer Builder Simulator, but he has heard stories of people actually getting hired off of playing that game, and it reminded me of something crazy. So Gran Turismo, GT Sport, you can actually, there was a tournament that if you won it, you actually earned your Formula One license.
Oh, really?
Like that's how accurate it is to real life. You can, I don't even think you have to win the tournament. I think you can legitimately earn your Formula One license with a specific setup and passing specific tests on GT Sport, which is insane.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So, although I jokingly said The Sims earlier for the answer to the first question, as a child playing that game, it was actually really a great learning experience, right? And like ridiculous things can happen in The Sims. Sure, it's over the top, but it also was a great introduction to resource management, money,
budgeting.
Yeah, like I can't buy super fancy stuff and not have a job and also pay my bills. I have to actually take care of myself, or I'll get depressed and a clown will haunt me, just like real life.
Yep. Accurate. 1-to-1.
Never mind, that was too dark. I'm not going to go there. But so that actually was one. But all in all, like, video games, I think, have the capacity to teach all kinds of skills.
Yeah.
More than once. So Cody, there are two types of people in the world. There are people who hate conflict and run from it, and there are people who enjoy it to an unhealthy degree. I'm the latter.
Okay.
And gaming over the years has actually forced me into situations where I had to learn to handle conflict in healthier ways than I used to handle conflict. Like team-oriented games, you're going to get pissed at each other. It's going to happen. And you either learn to resolve those well, or you lose people to play games with. Which is, a safer way of learning than some real-life conflicts can be. But teamwork in general, learning how to leverage certain people's skills and set them up for success in such a way that the whole team can succeed. Those things are all applicable to real life, and you may have to think about it a little bit because you're not going to be in gunfights with your friends probably, but you are going to be in situations where you've got to work with a group and identify who's better at what thing and give them what they need to help everybody win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've learned any life-altering skills through a video game, but I mean, pretty much my entire understanding of strategy in all sports that I love come from either come from video games or were honed within video games. Like, especially like football, because Madden, even when I first started playing it, like Madden 94, Madden 95. I don't know if you guys are familiar at all with the history of Madden, but like when EA approached John Madden about making the game, they wanted to do like a 7-on-7 like Tecmo Bowl did, and Madden was like, I'm not putting my name on anything that doesn't have 11-on-11, because he wanted to oversee like how strategy was implemented into the games, and he was actually like the point person on the development of the playbooks in the very first. And John Madden, legendary Hall of Fame football coach, Super Bowl winning football coach. So like those games were created with simulation in mind, or at least trying to stay as close as possible to the actual on-field product. So learned a lot of strategy about those games on that end. And then like just what Larry's saying, working as a team, I think Overwatch has made me a better, like I played sports growing up, but I was always kind of like a selfish teammate. I could share stories of multiple games I got kicked out of when I played catcher in baseball, because I've just run my mouth all the time.
Not you.
There's a reason that I guess God didn't create me to be good at sports, because he knew I'd just be a fucking asshole. So, but no, like Overwatch has teach me to be a better teammate, like, and more confident in like decision and strategizing and game planning and those sorts of things. And I think those things translate in real life in ways that I probably wouldn't just immediately recognize. But yeah, nothing 1-to-1 I can really think of though.
Yeah, I think it's definitely those more kind of secondhand social. It's interesting because I think video games have a habit of, or have a reputation for being super damaging, whether it's warranted or not. But I think a lot of kids, although it's not a replacement for actual social activity or social interaction, it can augment it in certain ways. And for me, just in terms of, there is actually a 1-to-1 skill that I've either learned or cultivated through video games, and it's drumming. Rock Band was a starting point from which I'm not like an incredible drummer by any stretch of the term, but that definitely allowed me an in into learning how to keep a rhythm and kind of play the drums in a way that guitar and guitar with those games doesn't translate as much.
Well, the Rocksmith game though, there was a kid in my last youth group who he learned to play guitar.
Yeah.
From locksmith.
That's yeah, it's meant as a tool to kind of teach you, or like be an intro to guitar lesson. Yeah. I guess the only other question I have, and this is, I was thinking about this recently, which is why I put it in. Is you, in terms of your understanding of strategy, Luke, I think this certainly applies to you, but has there ever been a game that kind of has taught you a skill that allows you to view other games in a completely new way? And the reason I bring this up is because I was writing a feature about boss battles and boss battle design, and I realized that my skill at rhythm games translated very well to understanding boss battles, specifically in Bloodborne and Dark Souls, because Bloodborne and Dark Souls are in many ways rhythm games, and boss battles are in many ways essentially an incredibly difficult song in a rhythm game. You have to understand patterns. You have to kind of detect attack patterns and attack animations. You have to be able to see ahead and kind of in front of you at the same time. I'm pretty much just asking this question because I wanted to kind of explore this a little bit more. But have you guys found any case like that in your own gaming history?
So for me, I can point to a specific game that taught me a lesson that applies to how I still play games to this day. James Bond, Agent Under Fire. This isn't going to make sense at first, but stay with me.
I'm on board.
Did you ever play that game?
Yeah.
So there was an item in this game. Well, it was an ability everybody had, and it was super broken. And online gaming wasn't a thing at the time on consoles, so I don't know if other people discovered how broken this was or not. But in my little town, none of my friends knew how broken this was. But it was the Q Claw. It would connect to literally anything in the game, and there was no cooldown on it. You could pull yourself to any surface with the Q Claw. And the idea was you could get up to some cool sniper perches or whatever. Well, at the same time Agent Under Fire was out, the first Spider-Man movie came out with Tobey Maguire. And so I started using the Q Claw like jokingly to swing around like Spider-Man. And so I had to start holding the game controller weird. Like I'd have these two fingers pinching the C stick and these operating the triggers to shoot the Q Claw and fire my gun. But I would just like swing around the map like Spider-Man, shooting people in the head, and they couldn't shoot me back because it was too hard to hit me. And I became like unstoppable at this game, which is not how the designers of the game intended Q Claw. I don't think.
Luckily, this was before patches.
Yeah.
But it was really my introduction to so John Boyd, great guy. You should look up John Boyd in the OODA loop. But the basic takeaway from the OODA loop is whoever can like filter through the decision making process most quickly is going to win the fight. And one good way to filter through it more quickly is to slow down your opponent, because every time you finish your loop before he does, he's going to have to start his loop all over and reorient himself. And so in gaming, winning is not just about who's mechanically better. If you can do something unexpected and just shock the other person and then shift to another unexpected thing, if you can keep the person on their heels, you can wreck them. And this happens in Overwatch games all the time. A team will like pull out some stupid thing that shouldn't work. Like I think about the Gladiators match where they used the Mei ice wall to sneak around behind. You know what I'm talking about on Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody uses Mei in competitive Overwatch, but they
At the time.
yeah. But they used her for one stupid trick play and rolled the other team. And that's my gameplay style. Like I'm trying to take you off guard. That's why if you ever play Halo with me, like I'm just constantly getting assassination, because I'm not trying to come face to face with you. I want you to think I'm somewhere, and then I'm punching you in the back of the head.
Yeah, mine's kind of similar. I consider the height of my like being good at video games to be Halo 3, and it was my skills in that were mostly because like I learned how to play that game slow and intelligent, and that kind of went out the window come Halo 4 and like all the different abilities, and I just kind of run into whatever, didn't care. But like it was more of a specific situation in Halo 3, so there were situations in which you could get placed on the opposite team from the other people that you were partied up with in Halo 3. Mm-hmm. And the rule was that if you got put on the other team, you weren't allowed to use your gun, right? Yeah, all of your kills had to be melee kills. And so for me, it was always just like, well, I'm still going to try really hard to get a ton of kills, but without being able to use your gun, you've got to use the map to your benefit. Like you have to take fights at like the appropriate and the smart times. And so I got really good at Halo 3 from all of those times where I would get placed on the opposite team in queue. And I'm slowly starting to feel myself get back to that with Overwatch. Like the game is starting to slow down for me. I feel like I'm a much better decision maker, better shot caller, because I use the map to my advantage and my abilities to my advantage, which is what Halo 3 was all about. Like Halo is a game built on map control, right? And not only just controlling the weapons, but controlling choke points and corners, and being able to slow down and play any multiplayer game. Like that's the problem with anyone who thinks they suck at a multiplayer game. It's like, well, if you just stop sprinting, just unbind sprint on whatever you're playing, you're probably going to get 100 times better. So that's probably my best example.
Yeah. I just, this is kind of a silly story, but I wanted to bring it up just because we talk all the time about things that we can learn from the games industry as a whole. But I do think there are things we can learn from the games themselves. And I figured it'd be a little bit more lighthearted and personal way to end this episode after all this industry news. So that's all I got.
And no, S. Billy, it was not a Meta Athena reference. Unfortunately, it was an Overwatch League reference, not a Contenders reference. So, all right, guys, let's finish this episode the way we've been finishing our episodes, with Two Truths and a Lie, Gaming Edition. All right. You guys ready for this? So I've got a game here that no one has ever heard of, LA Noire.
What's the score?
The score is I have 2 and everyone else has 0. So the way this works is I've got 3 statements about LA Noire. 2 of them are true. 1 is not true. If one of you guesses it right, you get a point. If neither of you guesses which one is a lie correctly, then I get a point. You guys ready to play?
You're such a great liar.
Here we go.
I'm not even sure we're friends anymore.
Number 1. Matt Lucky Yates was originally cast as Jack Kelso before having to back out due to scheduling conflicts with the TV series Archer. He was later replaced with John Noble. Number 2. The game actually made its debut at the Tribeca Film Festival as an hour-long film. Number 3. The social security number for Elizabeth Smart, 078051120, is a nod to the most widely used sample social security number popularized by wallet manufacturer E.H. Ferry, who marketed his product by showing that it could hold a social security number in the 1930s. All right. So we have Matt Lucky Yates originally being cast as Jack Kelso, debuting at the Tribeca Film Festival, and it featuring a very popular sample social security number. I believe Larry was you started last week, right?
No.
Okay.
I think Cody started.
Okay.
last week.
So Larry, we'll kick it over to you.
I have no idea. I'm gonna guess the middle one. I forgot it already.
The Tribeca Film Festival one is the lie?
Yes.
All right.
The one. I believe that's the lie.
All right. Cody?
I'll admit that I don't know who Matt Lucky Yates is. So this is a little bit of a tough decision. I only understand 2 of the prompts. The last one was the Social Security one, correct?
Yes.
I'll go with the Social Security one. That sounds cool. I hope it's true.
So you're saying that one is the lie?
Yeah.
I get another point, guys.
Oh my gosh.
Matt Lucky Yates was never cast. He plays hold on, I'm trying to remember the character's name.
This is a broken game.
He plays Dr. Krieger on Archer. But he was never originally cast to play Jack Kelso.
I knew the second one was true. I remember hearing that when the game came.
Yeah, it was an hour-long film, and then the crowd was able to ask questions of the developers afterwards. So it's a little
Pre-Bandersnatch.
fun fact for you. All right, guys, let's get out of here. Who are you? Where can we find you? What are you going to be tweeting about this week? Larry?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at LairHuntsZombies, and I will be tweeting nonstop about Apex Legends because I know what I'm doing this week, all week, nonstop.
Can't stop, won't stop.
All right. Codsworth.
I'm Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectionHair. I don't know. What am I going to be tweeting about this week? Maybe a little bit about Anthem, because I still want to kind of sort through my feelings about that. So what better way to do that than on social media in front of everybody?
All right.
That's how we do it in 2019.
All right, I'm Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at Hoagie_OW. And this week I'm going to be tweeting about my Overwatch League Season 2 power rankings that I'm working on. That are going to be published over on playerversusall.com later this week.
Nice.
So be on the lookout for that. And yeah. All right, guys, this has been PvA Radio, the show where we get together each week and we each have one of the biggest gaming news stories, including ones about simulators and games that came out 10 years ago. And then we have an in-depth discussion about them. Consider it your collaborative audio feature article, or CAFA. Cody, what do we tell people to do with that?
Put it on your forehead.
Yep, get it tattooed on your forehead. Over here, you can find us every Monday at 9 p.m. over on twitch.tv/PVA Radio. If you don't find us there, look for us on podcast services and YouTube as well. Just search PVA Radio. Guys, till next week, we love you. Goodbye.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Would you like me to take off that shortwave radio?